So let's get back to our newly created variables here, as you can see. So I'm going to explain what's going on here, because this part is not familiar to us. But if we take this, we have already seen some kind of things like this. We're creating a variable, and this is a type of our variable. So in our case, it's a text field, it's a label, so it also can be like var some string, and this can be type of string. So this is exactly the same thing as here. So let's look into the IB outlet part. What this means is that this variable is connected to a UI element on our storyboard. So this is what IB outlet part means. The weak means that our connection to our IB UI element is weak. We have also a strong type and we have a weak type. And Xcode by default helps us to choose which one is the correct one for our UI element. The meaning of the weak and strong, I'm going to put a link so you can read about this in more details if you want to. But just in short, I'm going to explain you in short terms here. The weak is this variable doesn't hold. Imagine this this variable holds a line to our user interface object, which is our mytalk text field, and when it's not used, we can remove this connection. So we don't have to have a strong connection in between them. Having a strong connection when it's not necessary may cause for your application to use extra memory, which is going to result iOS by killing your application if it starts using too much resources of the device. So by using a weak, it means when our view is no longer needed to show this user interface objects, we can deallocate them so we can free up the memory. So this is about the weak. Again, you can read about this in more details on Apple documentation. Then we have our var and then variable name, and the type is UI text field, which is our text field that we are using. The second, again, it's an IB outlet, a weak type variable, and then we give a name human age label, and this is a type of UI label. The UI is user interface, and then it says label, and you can see that exclamatory mark here for both of them. It means that these things cannot be a nil. So what is nil? Nil objects in Swift, it means there is nothing. So instead of saying nothing, it's just a nil. So if for our application to understand what this is, we are telling our Xcode that this thing cannot be nil. So we do have a human age label, and we do have a mytalk age text field. So these things are not nil and cannot be nil. If we want to tell our Xcode that this thing can be nil, we put a question mark next to it. So it means that this thing can be, this is an optional, which is a type, which is another type in Swift. So the optional means that it may have a value or it may not have a value. We're going to get into this later on, so don't pay too much attention to it. I just want to show you what this exclamatory mark here means. Here we have a function called viewDidLoad, and we have a keyword next in front of our function called override. So what this does, if we look on our viewController.swift file here, you see that it has a class called viewController, and then it says column here and says a UI viewController. So let's look into this. What does this mean? This is a class, and the name of the class. So this is declared class, then we give it the name of a class. And pay attention, the naming of our class, it's still camel case, but the first word is also starting in capital. So when you are naming your functions, your variables, you always start with a small letter, and then the rest are going to be capitals, the first. But when you are naming your class, the first letter is capital as well. So our class is called ViewController, and then by putting a column here and giving a UI ViewController is that we specified that this class is a subclass of another class. I don't want to think for you to be scared from this, because these are the default things. We are going to go into classes later, so you will learn what each class, we're going to create our own classes, and you will learn what the class is and what this is for. So for now, we just know that this is a class and it's subclass of ViewController, and this is going to control our view on our storyboard. Then we have an override function viewDidLoad, and the reason we are calling this override because there is a function viewDidLoad which is declared in the superclass, which is like a father class of our class, because we are saying that this is a subclass of UI ViewController. Again, don't pay too much attention to this. We're not going to use it for now. I will explain you when the time comes what this is for. So moving down is we have another IB action, and this time we have a function called calculate button pressed, and you can see that this is some kind of parameter passing to our function. So we have underscore here. What the underscore means is when we are calling this function, which will be called by clicking on our button there, we don't have to write the name and pass a parameter. I will show you this later on a different function that we're going to create, so you can see what this means. It just have a sender UI button. So UI button object is calling our calculate button. So for us to test if our function is working, if our button is working, I'm going to say print and say button click. So let's run our application. And if I click on my calculate button, you will see that my button click is printing out, which means that our connection is correct and our function is being called every time we click the button. So if I click it 10 times, it's going to print out 10 times my button click. So let's hide this part here, and we're going to access our my dog age and my human age. So this we're going to write some kind of logic that will actually take our dog age, which is the inputted value that our user will put here, and based on that it's going to calculate our human age and it's going to display it here. So let's I have here a chart open that shows us the dog age in human years. So if a dog is 1 year old, it's 15 years in human years. So if he's 2 years old, it's 24, 3 years, 28. So you can see that the number is not constant, that it changes differently. So adding 1 here, like in this case, adds 15 here, then it adds another 9 here, another 4 here, another 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and at the end it adds only 4. So we have like 15, then 9, and then it goes 4 each year. So in order to calculate, to write our function, we need to understand what we want our function to do. So we want our function to give a dog age that our user inputs, and we want our function to return the human age. and do the calculations there. So let's create this function. I'm going to write func human age, and we're going to pass dog age, which is an integer, and this is going to return an integer, which is going to be our human age. So let's say that we have received our dog age, and if I go open my chart again, we will see that we have some cases here. So we are going to use our if statement. Let's put this like this. So if I say if, and then I say, I have a typo here, dog age. So say if dog age is equals to 1, and we're going to put our curly braces. So what we want to do, before we do anything, I want to create a variable and call this human age, and say that this is a type of integer. Okay, we're not setting the value, pay attention here, we're not doing the value. And then before our function curly braces are closed, I'm going to say return human age. So our error will go away because we are going to return some type of integer. But right now it gives us an error because we are not, we never set a value of human age. So we never, we have this placeholder, if you can call it, but it never received the value, so it never was initialized. Actually, in order to fix this, we can set that human age is equals to 0 by default. So now our error will go away. And then we are going to take our dog age and check if it equals to 1. And if we check our chart here, it means that our human age is equal to 15. So I can say here that my human age variable is equals to 15. Then we are going to check for the 2. We say else if, and then we say dog age is equals to 2. Then we say human age is equals, and we're going to set it 24. And pay attention again to the equals, which mean we are checking the value, but when we are setting, we put only one equal. Then for the 3, we are adding 4 from 3 years and onwards. We are adding 4 to our age.